Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
In this thread, only post weird, paranormal, or potentially paranormal experiences you've had personally. I'll start. February 20th, 22. Start seeing this girl. She lives in the middle of the sticks of Texas. She doesn't want her parents to know about us yet, and we're both total weirdos, so we come up with the idea to hang out in graveyards in late hours of the night. She knows the layout of these lands, where all the graveyards are, etc. It's our third or fourth date. We're going to this new cemetery I haven't seen yet. This is much further out, deeper into the back roads. The trees cover them like a canopy. This is the middle of nowhere. We go up this hill on a shitty, really road. We're there. There's this gazebo before the entrance, a chain-link fence leading into the cemetery, which has a historical marker plaque. We do the usual. We look at the stones. We fix any flowers that might have been knocked over by the wind. Pay respects. This place is so old, there's stones marking back to some of the first pioneers in these lands. Tons of stones for the stillborns and miscarriages had during those times. Eventually decide to rest. We find a comfy spot, light up some smokes, and start chilling out. We start to hear this rustling. It's moving around us like something stalking us. Spooks me a little bit since this is an environment I'm definitely not used to. This stops for a while. We realize it's cold as shit, so we decide to get the extra blankets I kept in my car. We both agree that something feels off about this place. Something is wrong. On the way, we get distracted and decide to check out the gazebo. Being cheesy, we decide to carve our initials into one of the 4 posts, M+H. We explore to see if anyone else has carved anything into the posts. On the opposite side of the same post, some couple before us carved the same initials, M+H. Holy shit. We're both kind of freaked out, but pleasantly surprised. It felt like some kind of destiny or something. To me, anyways. Stop gawking, start heading to the car for the blankets. Suddenly, every coyote in Texas starts howling at a distance that couldn't have been much further from the tree line. No further than 100 feet. Quite a bit spooky. We decided to just sit in the car together for a bit. It was nice. We get out of the car. I have the blankets in one hand and a light in the other. In the light, I see this dark shape zooming just in front of me towards her. She starts screaming. No way the legend of the Piney Woods Panther is true. I'm pulling my knife, getting ready to gut this thing, yelling at her to get in the car, and then everything is still. It's a pure black dog, happy and tail wagging at us. This is the pupper that was making the rustling noises earlier. At this point, we've had too many jump scares and coincidences. We decide to load up the dog with us. We drop him off a short distance away, that way he doesn't get mauled by coyotes. Return to this cemetery one time only. Both of us get the sinking feeling in our gut. Don't stay long and leave. Never return to this particular cemetery. There's this legend about black dogs I heard about, supposedly originated in the UK. The way it goes is that there's this dog you might happen upon in your life. If you happen upon it, you're destined to see it a total of 3 times. The first time you do, you're met with prosperity and good times. The second time, all gain prosperity is undone. You will experience great misfortunes. The third time you see this dog, it is an omen of your impending death. Things are awesome. She's officially my girlfriend. I moved out of mom's place and I'm living with some buddies from high school, saving loads of money, working what I think is a reliable job. Literally living the dream. Got bros around, loads of money, awesome girlfriend. She's over at my place all the time. We're madly in love. We still go out on back roads and into other cemeteries. On one of these trips, I must have seen that dog for the second time. October 20th, 22, one of my roommates was killed in a freak accident. His father passed away the same day to unrelated causes. He was in a coma at the time. Not only is one of my friends dead, but now the other roomie and I haven't got enough money to afford the place we're at. Things are super screwed, not a good time. Other roomie moves, I move into the tiny duplex attached to the same building. Managing as best I can, still have other friends, girlfriend, job as a support structure to keep me sane. June 20th, 23. Relationship issues start. October 20th, 23. Another friend takes his own life. Experience a mental break at this point. November 20th, 23, get a call. My entire department is being laid off due to corporate shit. Christmas Eve, 2023. Girlfriend breaks up with me. Almost shot myself. My ex called the cops to keep me from committing self-termination. Working a miserable, highly physical labor job, my life can only be described as desolation. Maybe it's my ape brain trying to rationalize things, but I swear there was something wrong about that whole night. That dog, other shit we did in those cemeteries on those 1 a.m. adventures. I think that somehow we invoked something horrible. We poked in places at times not meant for us and ended up conjuring a malignance. I know logically all of these events have to be unrelated misfortunes, and I know the world doesn't revolve around me. My friends' lives and deaths aren't ghost stories. Still though, and maybe I'm losing my marbles, I can't help but wonder if there's some kind of curse. Maybe that dog should have meant more to me then, when we got those first sinking feelings. I seriously can't describe the dread we got from being in that area after that night. There was just wrongness in the area, almost a feeling of disgust. For now, I plan on staying away from that neck of the woods until I decide it's time to see the dog for the last time. Ironically, I told my ex about the legend of the dog the same night we had that first experience. Maybe that's why it makes so much sense to me. I can't tell how much of my perspective is just me trying to cope and push the weight of this horrible shit elsewhere, or how much I actually believe in the legend. For other anons reading experience, I'll state this is definitely a more vague story in terms of whether or not the paranormal is in play. If you're interested, I do have other much more definitively paranormal experiences to share, although not nearly as directly impactful as the one I shared already. I guess these posts are more for me than anything.
Going through a similar situation as you. Almost a 9-year relationship is about to end. I got laid off in December, money problems, health getting worse, and just feeling isolated. But lately, things have been better. I've been working really hard towards things. So I got a new job, and while things are not perfect, I'm very glad to be alive. And not to shit-talk your ex or you, but the way you guys were hanging out in the cemeteries doesn't seem like something a normal person would come up with. So one of you were likely being edgy, and well, that worn off. I'm guessing all that happened in your early 20s, and now you're mid to late 20s. I changed a lot in that period too, mostly for the better. So yeah, just keep grinding and keep looking for ways to improve yourself. You'll be surprised.
What you are referring to is the Wild Hunt.
The Wild Hunt, never heard of it, referred to that specifically. Can you provide more details?
It's a shared European folktale of divine, ghostly, and/or demonic. From the Christian version of it anyway, warriors and hunters riding across the sky. Usually during winter as a symbol of the passing of the seasons, and the souls of the dead traveling to the underworld. In Germanic tradition, its leader is Wotan, Greece, Artemis, UK could be King Arthur, Cernunnos, Herne the Hunter, Frau Holle, Gabriel, Satan, etc. In terms of specifically relating to black hounds, I'd look into the Welsh version of the Wild Hunt.
I know the painting goes by the same name, but it's nuts you chose that particular image. Way back years and years ago, I had edited it in Photoshop and set it as my wallpaper for a long time. When you posted, I went through other articles about the Wild Hunt and found this excerpt. They straddled black horses and black bucks while their hounds were pitch black with staring, hideous eyes. Which reminds me of a story I didn't even think was paranormal. I was with my girlfriend at the time. We're at another cemetery. We explored beyond the cemetery, down a hill overlooking a valley. We head back to the car and she realizes she dropped her keys. We go back down the hill, I pick up the keys, we look up and there's about 8 or 9 distinct sets of eyes looking right at us, each set of eyes sitting at about 7 feet high. We nope out of there and run uphill back through the cemetery into the car. We didn't think anything about it more than possibly cows roaming. Am I reading into this way too literally? The thing that gets me now that I'm remembering it is that we never heard a single animal sound, never had any indication that we weren't alone out there. If I've really been cursed by some Norse wild hunt shit, is there anything I can do?
I don't know if this can be considered paranormal, but be me. 1 a.m., start getting sleepy while checking the phone. Dreamloading.gif, my bedroom. Preparing myself for going out with my family. Look at my window, covered by fabric curtains. The curtain starts to lift like someone with telekinesis is moving it. I see a feminine figure at the other side of the window. Her hand is on the window. I live on a goddamn 3rd floor. I can hear her whispering somehow. Shh! My turn to change clothes. The curtain lifts more. I can see her smile. I somehow know if I see her eyes, I'm dead. She wears a yellow sweater. The curtain reaches her scleral show. Panic. I wake up. I feel my heart is going to explode. Scan my bedroom. Pareidolia makes me see faces and silhouettes on my door. But I know it's just clothes hanging and anime posters. See my window, the same as in the dream. My heart almost stops. Another silhouette on the curtains. Looks like a person leaning on the window. Not sure if the low level has lights or spots, because I have no idea how the shadow is on my curtains. Hell no. Go back to sleep while I call a friend to make me company. This is not the only time I dream of a creepy woman. Last year, a really weird dream on my parents' house, but feels like I am on House of Leaves, hallways and rooms that are not in my parents' house, weird geometric forms. I think my architect brain is overclocking right now. Hear the doorbell, a girl with other people. My dreams tell me I have known her since I was a child. My parents called me to meet the guests. That girl is a black silhouette. I can only see her eye wide open and her smile. A creepy smile. All other sounds in the room are isolated. I would kill for you, Anon. She smiles more. She touches my chest with her finger. What would happen if your heart stops beating? She asks. Tell her I don't want to know. Check my phone. A message from a friend. She is crazy. Run from her. She is always close to me. We sat at the table. People are talking, but don't pay attention. Wake up.
Okay, I've been thinking about posting this one ever since it happened, but didn't think it was X enough, despite it being up there with the most terrifying moments of my life. I live in a small village out in the sticks, northeastern Spain, not so far from the Pyrenees. Used to be afraid of the dark as a kid. Got over it after walking home in the pitch dark many times in rural Scotland. It's around a 2.5-hour walk home from the bus station. I generally have a great time strolling along. It's late, around 1 a.m. The moon is out in force, bright enough to cast long shadows. Can see the dirt road clearly. It's a sort of ochre color that the moonlight lights up brilliantly. Almost home, around 2/3 of the way. Completely in my head, enjoying the stillness, walking at a decent pace past the almond trees. The night air is thick with the scent of almond blossom, idyllic. It's a clean, sweet smell. All of a sudden I startle something in front of me, and it lumbers off into the trees off the path. I almost walked right into it, bearing in mind I wasn't paying close attention. My senses are on high alert, and I'm interpreting the situation very strongly. I'm immediately aware of a few things, without doubt somehow. Whatever this creature is, it's as surprised to not be alone as I am. It is perturbed to have been so unceremoniously disturbed. This usually wouldn't be a big deal. I've seen wild pigs around here a few times. They're pretty scary, but they're never alone, and this thing is definitely alone. What's more, they don't want anything to do with humans and run away as soon as they feel your presence. So, despite my initial thought that it must be a wild pig, something wasn't adding up. My initial reaction was that it must be a pig that changed rapidly. For one thing, I could hear it breathing, deep and wet. Sounds like a pig, right? Pigs don't growl. It was a predatory sound. Pigs also run away, and this is where my blood suddenly ran cold. Instead of running away, smashing through whatever was in its way like a pig would, this thing turned around and observed me. At this point, I'm fighting down the urge to unleash a primal scream. The terror is unreal. It felt like something physical trying to escape my chest. The hairs on my arms are on end. Somehow I resist and keep walking, head down, too scared to look directly at the looming bestial form standing there looking out at me from the trees. I only paused for a moment when I was initially startled. Otherwise, I was power walking, fighting the urge not to run. I knew that running would be a mistake. Don't ask me how I knew. Just like I knew screaming would be a mistake. Just like I knew this thing was following, growling, breathing wetly, watching me. I could hear it off in the tree line following me. Heavy footfalls, the whole 9, only a stone's throw away. After a while I stopped hearing it, but every so often my blood would run cold again. All I could think was it was another primal message, like my body was telling me each time it came back to check my progress. I know this sounds dumb, but it's all true. It only happened a couple of weeks ago.
On the normie side of things, pigs are really smart. Wild boars will attack you if they feel threatened. On the X side of things, it sounds really weird. I have had multiple encounters with animals that I don't think are animals. I do think they can be possessed, and possessing them is a way that the dead can interact with the world. Take that opinion for what it is.
I split this up because it's really long and also for pacing. About 10 years ago, my grandfather dies, April 2014. Never knew him that well, but it turns out my dad is in his will even though they were estranged. Dad wasn't expecting much and basically just got a box of random junk, threw it in the basement. Months later, we end up talking about Grandpa and I find out more about him. Grandpa was half Ojibwe, which makes me 1/8. But Dad never told me because both him and Grandpa hated tribe politics and refused to live on res. I look white anyway, so who cares? Dad stopped talking to him because Grandpa was still very into tribal religion, but Dad married into a Catholic family. Side note, parents stopped going to church sometime before I was born, so I was never confirmed or anything. Anyway, the box is a bunch of leftover native crap that Grandpa willed to Dad probably as some last-ditch effort to de-Christianize him. Dad doesn't give a damn and is just glad he didn't inherit any massive debt or anything, but he does say he regrets not making an effort to reconnect. About a year later, I'm moving into a residence at university and packing my stuff, and I see the box. Open it up. Predictably, it just looks like a bunch of weird wooden bone stuff with feathers and beads. Figure it might make a good talking point to impress chicks, so I grab some dreamcatcher-looking thing and stuff it in under a few of my shirts. Dad never even opened the box anyway, so it's not like he'd notice it's missing. 1 month into semester, I remember I have the thing and hang it up in my dorm room. That's when the trouble starts. That first night after hanging it, I just cannot sleep at all. No matter what I do, I just can't fall asleep. Figure it's just anxiety because of classes. Never in my life have I had worse nightmares that night. Fire, screaming, crying, running away, dark forests with monsters, people being murdered, just a continual horror show for what felt like days. When I finally wake up, it takes me almost 10 minutes before I'm able to fully convince myself it wasn't real. Apparently, I was quiet the whole night according to my roommates. After an exhausting-ass day, I sit down to do some homework, and I can't shake the feeling that somebody is staring at me. I'm in a single room with the curtains shut. There's nobody inside, but it feels like someone is standing right behind me. Several times I swear I see someone move beside me and snap around to look, but there's nothing there. Decide to just try to sleep early and normally. No dreams, wake up feeling better. Finish homework and go to class. Everything's fine. A week goes by with no incidents. Figure everything is probably fine. Weekend is coming up, so I make some plans to go out on Friday to a movie with a girl. Date sucks, but whatever, get home late. Walk into my room, ready to drop into bed. Look over at my closet and freeze like a deer in headlights. There's a figure standing right there in all black robes with a pale white face. Looks human at first, but the face proportions are all wrong. I blink. It's gone. I hit the lights, check the whole room, nothing there. I am weirded the hell out, but I'm so tired that I just want to sleep. Lights off, lay down. I check a few more times, but I can't see anything weird, so I drift off to the sound of my roommate reading something aloud in the room beside me. Next day, I ask roommate what he was reading. He looked confused. Tells me he wasn't reading anything. He was asleep before I was. Ask him if he had a podcast on or something to sleep. He says no. Asks if I have a pet or something. No. Well, I was hearing something shuffling around in your room. Might want to check for rats, bro. Pretty sure all my blood left my body for a minute, but he didn't notice. I have no classes on Saturday, so I end up being the only one home for a while. I check for rats just in case. There's nothing. Not that I would know because I've never had rats, but nothing looks out of place. Do some Google searching because while I'm not exactly an X-file at this point in my life, I'm not so stupid to not recognize some ghost shit when it's in front of my face. Conflicting info, as expected. The dreamcatcher thing really is just a dreamcatcher, a legit one, but nothing sinister at all. I end up reading about some Ojibwe legends about Manitou and such, but none of it sounds much like what I saw, but it's interesting for sure. I also read about exorcisms a bit out of curiosity. Never really knew much about them besides pop culture, but it's also neat. Can't find any legit footage that isn't obviously edited, but I look up some Latin Mass audio to get an idea of what it might actually sound like. Sounds weirdly familiar, though it's not like I haven't heard Latin before. Whatever, I order a pizza and play some vidya. Dark Souls 2 PvP, I remember that part really clearly. Roommates come back, eventually everybody goes to bed. Just before I fell asleep, I realized that the noise I was hearing from my roommate's room was Latin prayers. Don't sleep the whole night. Gotta skip around a bit because it doesn't really work that well to greentext this in order. Every 2 weeks or so for the next 3 months I have nightmares of varying intensity. I took the dreamcatcher down, obviously, but it didn't make a difference. I saw the figure 2 more times but never managed to make out any features besides long black robes and a deathly white face with smeared features. I also started dreaming about being locked in a small room occasionally. Roommates also told me multiple times that I talked in my sleep. So anyway, when the semester ends, I go home for a bit and talk to my dad again. Ask about my grandpa again. Dad knows I took the dreamcatcher but isn't mad. Asks me if I lost or broke it. Say no, I was just curious and I didn't think he'd care anyway. He doesn't really care and tells me a bit more about Grandpa. Grandpa was abducted from his parents and put into a residential school as a kid. This was actually the reason he and my dad stopped talking. My grandpa absolutely could not accept that his son was marrying a Catholic. Some pieces start falling into place a bit. Don't want to say anything about the crazy shit, so I just keep my mouth shut. I also found out that the contents of that box weren't packed there by my grandpa, but by the people who cleaned up his place after he died. That stuff, dreamcatcher included, was around his house. In fact, most of it was in the bedroom where he died. So anyway, I spent 3 more weeks at home before going back to the dorm. The very night I got back, I woke up at around 2 a.m. and I saw the robed guy again, standing at the foot of my bed. It's weird. The black of his robes is so dark that it's easily visible against the walls without the lights on. Now that I know what I'm looking at, he looks like a priest, just scary. I can't be sure, but it seems almost to me like I'm having some kind of waking nightmare of something my grandpa saw. Without turning on the light, I get the dreamcatcher out of the closet. I'm half expecting some demon to jump out, but no, it's just string and wood and a few feathers. The ghost priest thing is still looking at me, and I swear I can hear faint praying in Latin. Without being told or even looking it up, somehow I just know what to do. Everybody's asleep, so I quickly grab a few things, slip out of my room, then go downstairs and out of the dorm building. There's a spot where the smokers generally congregate. I go over, throw the dreamcatcher in the big ashtray, and pull some dry grass from nearby.
Have you seen more figures when you explored haunted locations?
Oh, definitely, they're not uncommon at all. I'd hazard a guess that most people see them if they spend the night in a very haunted location. It's just that they usually end up appearing in the corner of your eyes or something at first. Except for people who are particularly receptive, you sort of have to get yourself into the right headspace to see a ghost. Even then, it's not so much like seeing a physical object. It's kind of hard to explain. If you've ever had one of those situations where you are almost asleep and you are dreaming, but you're aware that you are having a dream and can willingly choose to perceive either reality or the dream because both feel equally real, that's probably the closest feeling to truly seeing a ghost that I could describe. At least that's for me, but as far as I can tell, I'm not particularly sensitive to most of these things. Most of the time, what I end up getting in a haunted location is more like strange feelings and maybe brief sensory disruptions, I guess. Things like whispers in my ears for just an instant, or the sense that something is touching me when nothing is touching me. There's an old abandoned place near where I currently live that I explored overnight about a year ago. That was the site of a murder self-termination. And the entire time I was in there, I kept feeling as though someone was gently rubbing my neck and patting the top of my head, as an example.
I've met someone that did some urbex on abandoned places, but didn't feel that type of feeling from his experience. Maybe he wasn't receptive.
Well, there's a bit of a difference between just abandoned and haunted. Abandoned places can be creepy, sure, but something being haunted is an entirely different thing and usually has to involve some sort of mass death or tragedy. While I'm pretty sure that time of day doesn't technically matter when it comes to encountering some kind of ghost, staying overnight seems to be the best way. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say it's because people are more on guard at night, and the lack of light makes it easier for your brain to accept that there could be things that you didn't immediately notice when you look at something.
This reminded me of a story from high school. Also, the wild hunt thing sounds really interesting. Late night hanging out with a friend and his girlfriend. We found some random cemetery to hang out in. We were standing on a hill, them facing me looking uphill, and me facing them looking downhill. I don't remember what we were talking about. Both of them get horrified looks on their faces and take off running down the hill. I think they're messing with me, but then I realize they seem to be serious. I panic and think I need to run too. No time to turn around and see what scared them. Friend looks back at me while running and says something along the lines of, "Holy shit, that thing is huge." I realize he's looking above me, not behind me. At this moment, friend and his girlfriend are at the end of the hill. It turns into a steep cliff at this point. There is an elk statue, pick kind of related, at the end of the hill, and my friend and his girlfriend hid behind it. Something enormous soars over my head and dives at my friend. I can see the silhouette against the night sky. I'm thinking it's an owl or an eagle. For reference, it's at least twice the width of the elk statue. It could have easily picked my friend up. The flying thing wasn't able to get my friend and flew off into the darkness. We left, not so much scared but more in shock. The thing was so humongous and seemed really intent on getting my friend. The thing that makes this story strange to me is the following year my friend died and ended up being buried in the same cemetery. I try to visit his grave as much as I can, and every time I'm there I wonder if there was some connection to what happened that night and his death, maybe an omen or something. Also, what makes this story stand out to me is about a year ago I read somebody tell almost the exact same story here on X with different details.
I had 2 cats and lived with my brother and his girlfriend in a flat. Having traveled recently before airports were shut down cause of the plague, I became sick for some weeks. Our old cat really liked me and he was one of my most important friends. He was always with me, and this time it was no different. Maybe you don't know, but cats can suffer from the plague too. His health deteriorated fast and died a few months after. The other cat would stay with me too, waiting for the older cat to come back and play with it. The house has a wooden floor, and it makes noises. With the cats moving and playing, I never cared for any creaking that I could hear, and by the time of its death, I was already too used to it. I remember hearing the creaking noises and assume it's temperature difference or something else since the other cat was next to me. Since then, my brother and his girlfriend left and took the remaining cat, and I had been working somewhere else for some time. Trying to find a job, it's not uncommon for me to stay up late getting shit done, but it only occurred to me now that I haven't heard any creaking in the past months. That little cat always tried to sneak up to be with me. A nice friend.
Be me, degenerate high schooler in 2015. Live in a weird spot, big city in one direction and empty mountainous desert in the opposite. Neighborhood is quite literally across the street from a mountain with a park built right at the base. One night hanging with good friend, we'll just call him Bro. Wander off to park with Bro so we can smoke, find a good spot, put on some metal and bullshit about life. Some time passes and we begin to pack up and wander back home. Bro sees something glowing in the night sky above us, so we walk. Look up and see a glowing orange orb, moving upward in a slow, subtle, serpentine motion, leaving a dissipating trail behind as it moves what-the-hell.jpg. Bro and I debate on what it is, throwing suggestions out like flare or missile, shit like that. Object suddenly comes to a dead stop. The trail slowly disappears as it sits still. Looks like pick related. Some time passes, me and Bro just stand in the street watching it hover like the baked dipshits we are. Suddenly the orange light goes out like someone flipped a switch. Can still barely see it. Not sure what kind of shape it was exactly, but noticed something like panels with little dim lights flashing in RBG colors. Bro and I stand in silence, fixated on this thing. Eventually hear the whirring of helicopter blades. 5, maybe 7 helicopters fly over and form a circular formation around the object. Helicopters and the objects start moving in tandem, watching them quietly fly over the city and far into the darkness. Bro is just kind of standing there in awe. My teenage brain is going crazy with different thoughts all at once. Me and Bro decide we're too high for this bullshit and head back home.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.